Thanks for the Memories came out, and I love Chimps. Chimps are good times, so that was a fun time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a long-awaited musical tier list. We haven't done one of these. I was looking in like well over a year. I think the last one we did was Queens of the Stone Age, which feels
Oh,
like a lifetime
bangers.
ago.
Banger Central.
I think it was very, very top-heavy ratings on there because their discography is pretty damn good. It's pretty
I
damn
think
good.
this might be similar, truth be
We will
told.
see. We are looking at, of course, the discography of a little known pop punk band called Fall Out Boy. They're young, they're hungry, and damn it, I think they might go far. We are going to do the usual tier list affair where you've got S, which is the very, very best, all the way down to D, which is, I didn't think of anything funny for that. So I don't know, Fall Out Poo, something like that. I don't know. That's normally the safe bet is just to say poo. But you know how a tier list works. We're going to go through this discography in chronological order, say what we like, what we don't like. My name is Tom. I am joined by my resident Fall Out Boy experts, one Craig Bourne.
Hello. Did you know that the name comes from The Simpsons? There you go. That's a good fact, that, isn't it?
I always get it confused whether or not it's Fall Out Boy or Fall Out Boy, one word. I'm pretty sure it's three individual words if I remember off the top of my head.
I think in some of the songs people do shout FOB, so I feel like that gives some credit to that.
Son of a bitch. But enough about my Saturday night. Dobby, what's your relationship with Fall Out Boy? Have you been a fan a long time? Have you recently discovered them? What?
Long time fan of Fall Out Boy. I would say, I mean, I won't spoil anything, but they were one of the first proper rock bands. An album came out when I was in year nine, and they were one of the first proper rock bands whose album I would rinse front to back, day in, day out. I loved it. Interestingly, it's not necessarily the one everyone would think, but yeah, I think the majority of my feeling on I did a quick look through on through my iTunes just before we started recording, and I think the majority of today is going to be quite positive actually, which is strange because I don't necessarily feel wholly positive about Fall Out Boy in my gut, but I think that's because for much of the last decade they pissed me off.
Interesting, interesting. I was trying to work the years back to find out to think about what album you must have been rinsing, but I would say my first introduction to Fall Out Boy, I grew up in a time where my dad was very responsible for a lot of my music taste. Growing up, he was the one who introduced me, and he wasn't overly fond of the whole pop punk thing, like Blink 182. He liked Green Day, but a lot of it he sort of try to steer me to say, well, not necessarily steer me, but you get influenced. And I thought, oh, that's not real punk. That's not like the Ramones or whatever. And so my first reaction was to be quite dismissive of them, particularly when I first discovered them. But ever since, you grow up and you start to develop your own tastes, I've been a big old fan of Fall Out Boy. I think they are one of the more entertaining bands that I've seen live. I think they're a real good live show, at least what I've seen. Dobby seems to be disagreeing. He looks a
We'll
little
talk
bit
about
like,
that.
yeah. I mean, we could talk about it now. We're not talking about the
Okay,
album.
so I've seen Fall Out Boy four times now. First two times they were great. Most recent two times not as great, but I think one of those two times was a crowd problem rather than the band itself.
That's not
You're one of
never a
those
good thing.
people that blame the crowd.
I
Oh,
can
dear.
explain why. It was this year at Download. They headlined Download, and I think the set itself was predominantly very good. They were doing the Fall Out Boy eras tour stuff. It was the first time they'd done it, so there was a bit of, you could see they were working some things out as they were going. It wasn't necessarily straight away ready to be played for people. And the transitions between sets were generally like five people walking on, pushing a sheep unicorn thing, and then it goes up into the sky. And it was cool to see it, but it's like, okay, there's some kinks to be worked out here. Problem was, so at Download this year and for most of this year, I've been having some chest issues. I went into the crowd before Fall Out Boy for the Offspring, had a great time with the Offspring. They were really good at Download this year. By the time Fall Out Boy came on, it was tough to get anywhere where I wasn't either surrounded by cigarette smoke or vape smoke. And with chest problems, that was a massive issue. And Download this year was, to say a bog, it'd be an understatement. So moving away from these people was a bit of a nightmare. So they're doing their Eras tour, and so it's quite front loaded. And I'm not going to sit here and say Fall Out Boy are a front loaded band in terms of their best albums. But that meant you got like Sugar You're Going Down, Dance Dance, This Ain't a Scene within the first half an hour. And then you get to the back half an hour and you're having to listen to things from later albums, and I'm just standing there with chest problems and getting very tired. And I was just like, you know what? This isn't good enough for me right now. They're not that great a live band that I can stand through the shit I don't care about.
Fair enough.
I've had a similar experience with Tenacious D at Download.
Yeah.
Um, I I know they're a good band, but it wasn't until I saw them play their own gig at their own venue where I was like, yeah, this is Tenacious D. I know they can be.
Some
So
bands are like that. Yeah. I mean, it could be the same with Fall Out, but the two times I've seen them in recent memory, I mean, they headlined Download and they were second of the fr big three bands for Hella Mega Tour, and I think they were easily the weakest band that day, to be honest. But
I see the only time I've seen them live was Hella Mega, and I thought they were real good. But then again, I thought it was pretty good across the board for Hella Mega.
it was a good time, yeah.
The thing is that they have effectively two frontmen in Pat Stump and Pete Wentz.
They have the actual front man, and then they have the one everyone cares about.
Well, they have the talented one and the one with personality. Uh,
Yeah.
when Pete
if we're being
Wentz is
honest.
on a mic, it makes me laugh every time because he can't sing and he tries to sing along, and it's so funny.
I do like that they even though they only have two songs with any screaming vocals that he does, he still insists on doing both of or at least one of them every single show. And it's yeah. But anyways, I think it's going to be interesting to see where we go. I think there's going to be some that we definitely agree on. I think there's going to be a few that we absolutely fundamentally disagree on. But that's all part of the fun of tier listing. So let's start with one which I think is probably going to be either the hardest or the easiest to do because I think it's the one that either we're not aware of or have the least to say about, which is their debut amateur album, Fall Out Boy's Evening Out with Your Girlfriend from 2002, which Dobby, you didn't even think this
Oh,
album
Tom,
existed.
is that the one that looks like it's got a McDonald's logo on it?
Dobby, that's the
Wink,
one.
wink. It
We
does
did.
though. Like below where it says four, I genuinely this is quite small on my screen to be fair, but I thought it was a McDonald's arch, and so I thought they'd given away a single or something with Happy Meals. But apparently not.
Oh, can you imagine? That'd be a
You said
great
it was
cover.
an amateur album. I didn't know that was the genre they were in these days. I'm not
It's
much of an amateur man myself.
I, I guess I mean before they hit like a major record label, it was very much on a DIY label, and it comes across in the production. I think it's fair to say that Patrick Stump got more confident in his voice as Fall Out Boy have gone on, particularly sort of around the Infinity on High onwards. I would say he definitely found his vocal range, and he does not have it here. It is at best generic, at worst rough, like real rough to a detriment. I think there are a couple of decently written songs on here. Like I think Pretty in Punk and Switchblades and Infidelity are two tracks that I can go back and say, hey, if they re-recorded these now, I bet they'd be real good tracks. But the rest of it, I either don't remember or just don't have much
Uh,
interest in listening to.
yeah, I mean, like I knew this existed, but I've never listened to it. I'm looking at the track listing now. Calm Before the Storm obviously made it on to Take This to Your Grave, but otherwise, I don't think I know any of the others. I think I'm right in saying Patrick Stump was originally the drummer, and then they heard him sing, and they were like, "Hey, you've got to be the singer." I don't know if I'm making
Yeah,
that up.
because I'm pretty sure most of the people in Fall Out Boy were in like hardcore punk bands before they went into Fall Out Boy. So I
Yeah.
guess yeah, it's an interesting debut for a band. I think it might be at the lower end of the spectrum. Craig, have you listened to this album?
I have not.
In that case,
I'm very helpful in this situation.
would we be adverse to just dropping it into D, given that
Yeah, I mean, I know what's coming, and I know where p things are roughly going to go in my head at the very least. And you know, if I've not listened to it, we can't really put it alongside some of these other things, so I just put it at the bottom.
there, I think I agree. The two most beautiful words in the English language, default. Now we're going to get cooking with Take This to Your Grave, their first, I believe it was on Fueled by Ramen, their first
Mhm.
major label release. I think I'm going to put the cards on the table. This is my favorite Fall Out Boy album. I think it is
Um,
fantastic.
it doesn't surprise me that you say that, and I wouldn't disagree that it's your favorite Fall Out Boy album, but it's not the best Fall Out Boy album.
I never said that. I said it's my
It's not the
favorite.
best. I think this is let's be clear. I like Take This to Your Grave. I don't necessarily like it a lot because as far as Fall Out Boy goes, I don't think this necessarily sounds fully formed Fall Out Boy yet. I think this is too early a Fall Out Boy for me to say I love it. But I think it's a good album. I think it's very indicative of the music that was around at the time, and which is why I don't think it's necessarily uh it's not Fall Out Boy formed yet, as it were. It's Fall Out Boy still doing their version of what was at the time growing before in the coming years they would go on to make Fall Out Boy albums. But I do think it's good. There's some really, I mean, the single Grand Theft Autumn is a great song. Saturday's a great song. Dead and Arrival is a great song. There's one other one on there that I mean, Calm Before the Storm, I already mentioned, but the Pros and Cons of Breathing, I think, is one I really like. I'd have loved to hear them do that later on. I don't think I've ever heard them play it.
Is that the
Uh,
one with the big woes in the
yeah.
middle? Yes, I think that might be my favorite on the album as well.
Um, yeah, I think it's good. I don't think it's great, but I'd say, as far as debut albums go from certainly bands in this scene, it's a standout.
I think so. What about you, Craig? Have you got any thoughts on this album?
Um, I think this is a good start, not to say I completely agree with Dobby, but I think you can hear you can hear it's sort of like many initial albums. I think it when you look back, you can go, okay, I can see how they got from here to here, and this might be your favorite, but it's not really my favorite. It's good. I will give them that. It's a good first album.
I think there's many things which I think are my favorites, which are objectively not the best. I think you are absolutely right that this is proto baby Fall Out Boy still, where they're discovering that sound. I think again, I had so not even a nostalgia because I was effectively 8 years old when this album came out, so I don't think I can call it first-hand nostalgia. But that whole sound of early 2000s emo tinged pop punk, sort of your likes of Fall Out Boy. I would even consider maybe a bit of Alkaline Trio at the time as well. I think it lends into some of those bits. I think I have a nostalgia for that, and so therefore it just gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling hearing these tracks. I think again, Patrick Stump's voice, it's very good, but it's not what we would know him for. It's not that soulful crossover voice that he would come to get. But I think the songs are good. I think the songwriting is indicative of what they would go on to do in terms of very tight, witty lyrics as well. I want to give it a B. Any thoughts on a B?
Yeah, I would agree with B.
We will leave it in B. And B is where it shall remain unless we have any disagreements or second thoughts later on, because nothing is eternal. Right, let's move forward to what is their breakthrough album. From Under the Cork Tree, it has a big old Sugar We're Going Down, the Dance City Dance Dance song. What do we think about this album?
I mean, look, I think a lot of Fall Out Boy fans would say this is the pinnacle of Fall Out Boy. I'm not one of those people. Um, there's no doubt about it. This is not just a good album, it's a great album. It is a great album. It's undeniably a great album. The singles on their own would make this so fucking listenable, but the rest of the songs really good as well. Um, it's hard. I didn't I knew these songs. These songs were in rotation when I was really starting to get into music. I knew Sugar We're Going Down, Dance Dance. I knew them, I heard them, I saw them on Kerrang all the time, and I enjoyed them. But I never decided to listen to the album off the back of it. I saw the album cover a few times in HMV. I was like, oh yeah, I might get that someday. Didn't end up listening to it for a few years yet. Um, but it's undeniable. In recent years, well, not even just recent years. I remember when Fall Out Boy returned from their hiatus in 2013. I really listened to From Under the Cork Tree an awful lot, mostly because I had a partner at the time who loved Fall Out Boy. Because, well, actually, who of us didn't at the time, to be fair. Um, yeah, big fan. It's going to be hard to place this one between two different tiers for me, I think.
Craig?
I think this is a very, very good album. If nothing else, it is the most the most words in song titles for one album that I've ever seen. I think this is probably where Andre 3000 got, his inspiration for his recent album. I it's just they're all good. These are all good songs. The singles, like you say, they are very, very. I think sing-alongable is the word I would use to describe them. They are very catchy. It's like they know how to make a good song with this album, and then they thought, let's just keep making good songs. Why don't more people do that? I
Yeah.
think that's what people should do.
Well, Fall Out Boy forgot how to do it for 10 years, to be fair.
Um,
Hi-oh!
But yeah, I would say this is definitely a cut above their initial album. You can see their sound being refined, and they are getting more airtime because of it, because everyone, is aware that they are getting better and better. And it really does show with this album.
I agree. I think you have a battle between them and Panic at the Disco for amount of syllables in song
Yeah.
titles around this time. And damn it, I think Fall Out Boy just about pip them. I think this is a really, really good album. Like you say, the singles, I think, by the nature of being singles, are the shining points of this album. Um, I can see why they hit that the zeitgeist of this time with this album, and it just was a perfect crossover between, that mid 2000s teen movie nostalgia and pop punk. It just all sort of glued together. I think A Little Less 16 Candles might be my favorite track on this album. I think
Interesting.
it is also a fantastic music video, which probably tweaks my opinion a little bit. Lots of cameos from other people from the scene. I think it's got Brendan Urie in it, the singer of what they called Academy is in that music video as well. Whose name I cannot remember. William Beckett, that's it. I remember his name. Um, I think this is an A for me. I think that's where I would put it. If I was being objective, I still think um, Take This to Your Grave is my favorite album. But if I was being objective, I think this is an A. I don't think it's quite S, but a high A.
Tough call. I'm very torn between S and A on this for me. Um,
Never torn between T and A though.
I'm a T man, I guess. Um,
Oh, Gray.
what do you think,
I'm
Craig? Did you say Earl Grey? Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
He doesn't drink
Craig,
tea.
Craig's just over there speaking about whatever. I don't know what he's on about. Um, yeah, it's hard because I look at the other albums that we have,
Yeah.
and I would put this at S. Um, yeah, why not? Let's put it at S. It's a
I'm
good
I
album.
think I'm yeah, I think I'm leaning towards S.
Why not?
Um, I mean,
We
I
can always
said
change it.
Yeah.
absolutely. I said high A. I think an S is not far off that. So we can always change it. And it means that the tier list currently has a nice shallow E shape, and I like that. Let's ruin the E by looking at 2007's Infinity on High, which if my math is correct, Dobby, this is the album that you were rinsing.
Oh, absolutely. I fucking love Infinity on High. Infinity on High remains one of my favorite albums to this day. I adore Infinity on High. I mean, off the back of knowing, Sugar We're Going Down, Dance Dance, once This Is a Scene arrived, it felt like such a call to arms, a manifesto. Call to arms probably fits the name of the song better, doesn't it? But I mean, this is right around the time when I was really starting to be, my hair was growing out. I was about to start dyeing my hair for the first time. This was one of those songs that really stuck in my craw, if you will. And then the set of Thanks for the Memories came out, and I love Chimps. Chimps are good times, so that was a fun time.
And a really
Um,
young Kim Kardashian for some reason.
yeah, it's a strange one. Actually, no, it's not a strange one because Pete Wentz was just in that world, wasn't he?
Yeah,
It was
valid.
always strange to me. But the song that really got me, the song that really got me, my favorite Fall Out Boy song to this day. I went to year nine camp. In year nine, we went to camp. We did a week of camping, like with activities and shit. And literally the day before we went, I heard the song "The Takeover, the Break's Over" for the
Down,
first
down,
time.
down, down, down,
That
down, down,
fucking
down, down,
riff, that
down.
fucking riff is exceptionally good, and it gets stuck in my head almost weekly. Um, I heard it and I immediately put it onto my MP3 player, and it was the only song I had on my MP3 player because I'd just gotten it. So we were at camp, and every night I was just listening to that song on repeat. I loved it. I loved it so much. And then the album came out, and front to back, I think at least twice a day for a good few months. I adore Infinity on High so much. I think every song is great. Even like I think Golden, it became a bit of a skipper for me. I could skip Golden, but only because it was a bit slower. Otherwise, oh, I feel this album in my bones, man.
Not your bones. In the takes over as the breaks over, my introduction to that song was Guitar Hero on the DS,
Mhm.
which again, sidebar, phenomenal idea. Having the grip be on the DS was, I love that game. And yeah, I agree. I think if I was going to pick a favorite song off the album, it's Carpal Tunnel of Love because
Yeah. Oh
I
my
think
God, yes.
I think it just has that slightly like sinister, vibe to it, which I really dig. And Pete Wentz, God bless him, does a bit of screaming at the end. But yeah, I really dig that song. I dig this album a whole lot. What do you dig about this album, Craig?
I just think that this is a good party album. I think I mean, I'm the oldest, but this came around at a very what's the not adaptable, a learning time for me and what I enjoyed about music. And I think with the singles from this album really helped bring publicity to it. And then when you listen to it, it's just a good time. It's just full of good rock music, I think. That's my thoughts about it,
We
really.
love good rock music. I
Mhm.
agree. I think this is where Pat starts to get his chops as a vocalist as well. I think
Yep.
you only need to hear the opening of This Ain't a Scene to hear that real R&B infused vibe to his voice really kicking in, which I think really elevated them beyond just being a pop punk band to being an entity in of themselves. I think it's great. I think it's fun. I think for me, I had a little bit of a period where I went off it, but I think that was just purely based to overexposure, where I just listened to it so much that I went off it. But every now and then, even though I don't actively seek it out like I would used to, if a song comes on, I'm like, God damn, that's a good song. Um, yeah, I think S. I think put it
This
above.
is my
Yeah.
yeah, this is my favorite Fall Out Boy album. I think it is the best Fall Out Boy album. I would stick my flag in the ground on that. I think it is without question. If you're talking Fall Out Boy, what they are, what they do best, and the best body of work front to back that shows this is Fall Out Boy and these are the great songs they make, this is the one for me.
And so it was written. It will be at the top of S for now. Now we're going to jump forward to Folie Deux, not the Joker film, but indeed the last album Fall Out Boy would make before their hiatus for, I mean, it was only a relatively short hiatus,
Four
but
years in the end, wasn't it?
yeah, I mean, I remember with this album coming out, I'm thinking Fall Out Boy was just done. I thought, oh well, that was it. This is their last album, and god damn it, they went out on another high because I really dig this album as well. Might even, if in my 2024 brain, say it might even be a little bit better than Infinity on High for me. I know, Craig, this is your favorite Fall Out Boy album, if memory serves.
Thank you for passing it to me. This is not just my favorite Fall Out Boy album. Since teenage years, I've this has always been in my top five, and if not in my top five, just overall, it's been really, really up there for me. Um, I just had this album on repeat all the time. There is enough energy through all the different songs, and even though they are completely different from one another, that I think that this album is just very, very good. Like I think there's 500 people featuring on What a Catch Donny, and I didn't even realize that until like a few years later how many people were actually in that song. And I think that is a testament to how you can have people feature on a track, but it doesn't take away from what the band is singing as well. Really good album,
Who
really
features on
good.
that song? I don't think I've ever really paid attention.
Oh,
Uh,
so many people. Elvis Costello, Brendan Urie. It's
yeah,
the
What?
fucking
How have
yeah,
I never known
yeah.
this?
William
it's
Beckett,
Jesus.
Travis McCoy,
yeah.
like lots of people.
It is basically their Bohemian Rhapsody. Like, no, I'm serious. Like that is their Bohemian Rhapsody, I would say, where it's just sort of this modular song that just keeps building and building and hitting the microphone. Apparently, it's yeah, it's big.
Yeah, no, it is, and there's different versions of it as well for some reason because I don't think they could clear it for the video version. So the video version sounds just quite different, I think, as an audio tour. Um, but let's not make this a whole love fest. Let's see what Dobby thinks.
I would say I love this album. It's been a gradual love for me. I wouldn't say I started to love this album until very recently. Um, Folie Deux to me was always something of a, I would say like a little sibling to Infinity on High because it tried to do what Infinity on High did before it, just not as good. And that's not to say I don't think the album is good. I think actually when Folie Deux came out, I think a lot of people did shit on it a little bit, and I think it was unfair that they did. I think it's a very underrated Fall Out Boy album. I think especially again, given some of the stuff they've released, it's elevated all the more in recent years. My problem with Folie Deux is I think it's Fall Out Boy beginning to believe the myths and legends about themselves. And we've spoken about What a Catch Donny here. What a Catch Donny, I think, is if you're not already a Fall Out Boy fan, I'm sure you can appreciate What a Catch Donny, but I think you probably can see it for the wank fest it is. It's them really wanking themselves off. It's them really being like, "Oh, we're just the best, aren't
And
we?"
you don't like
They've
to
got
watch that?
hey, not really. And they've got, I mean, we've said they've got everyone on, and that's all well and good. You can have everyone on. But some of they have Brendan Urie on singing the chorus from Dance Dance. Elvis Costello is there to sing. Well, they got all these guests singing choruses from their previous hits, which, it feel come on, man. Especially when they hadn't, they didn't say they were going to be breaking up at this point. I don't think they knew they were breaking up until they started touring the album, to be completely honest with you. But I mean, the thing that really annoys me about What a Catch Donny is Elvis Costello is there singing a line from a song that is on Folie à as if it is one of their hits already. It is so self-aggrandizing. It makes me cringe a little bit.
See,
Um,
I had a different experience with that. I was just like, this is really good. Like the way they were able to fit the other songs into this song.
Fit them in.
Um,
They just have them. It's literally they just sing the chorus over the song.
how many other songs do you know that does that? It doesn't happen that
It doesn't make it a
often.
good thing.
Maybe
See,
more songs should try it, and it would be a good thing.
Do you know
into
what? There's Aerosmith, Walk This Way, obviously. They have a song called Just Push Play, which came out in 2001. And at one point in the song, Steven Tyler suddenly goes, Walk This Way. And then the riff plays, and you're like, no, don't do that. You're just reliving past glories. Like, What a Catch Donny is a great song, I'd say, until the last minute, to be honest.
Does
Um,
the cadence you said "Walk This Way" was like the Foo Fighters?
the Foo
Like
Fighters, very,
it
very
was,
walking this way, if you will.
yeah.
walking this
Um,
way.
um,
Um, so I have a couple of things to say on that. One, I can't criticize any band for being self-aggrandizing because Refused are one of my favorite bands, and their seminal album is called The Shape of Punk to Come, and basically did end up living up to being one of the most revolutionary albums in the punk scene at the time.
yeah, but to counter that, that was what was that? That was the only album they released at the time, wasn't it? They didn't release more than one.
Oh yeah, they had about three albums before that.
All the same, I would say like it was not the same level because Fall Out Boy were becoming this massive entity. I think it's, big head syndrome a little bit rather than, a punk band who are releasing a punk album. This is a band who were trying to take a step, perhaps in the sort of American idiot, trying an attempt at like an American Idiot leap that never quite worked. Um, the other things I want to say on this album, actually, you said you had another point, didn't you?
Yeah, it's just another very stupid one. The best way to link to one of your previous tracks is the way that Electric Six in their song Gay Bar Part Two, just in the middle of the song, just say Gay Bar Part Two. And other than that, it's a completely different song.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, yes.
It's a really good song.
Um,
It is a good song.
the other thing I'd say, like you take the I Don't Care was the first single for this album. Very good song. I like I Don't Care. I don't think it reaches the heights of any of the three first singles on Infinity on High or anything on uh, Under the Cork Tree for that matter. The second single was America's Sweethearts, and I don't think America's Sweethearts is a bad song, but it's not a great song. I think this album is peppered with songs that aren't, that needed more time in the oven, perhaps. But with that said, because I know I've been quite negative so far, I mean, I look at songs like 27. 27 is my favorite on the album. I love 27. West Coast Smoker, another incredible song. And it is hard to say this isn't a great album because there are great tracks throughout. I mean, for every America's Sweethearts, there's at least two others that are really good. And my own dislike of What a Catch Donny and the sort of big head syndrome that pervades Folie à for me, you know, in recent years, while I may not have loved it as much at the time, I do find myself coming back to not necessarily the full album, but tracks from this album I'll put into my regular daily playlist, quite often just to sit and listen to them for a month. Um, I know where you guys are going to want to put it. I don't want to put it in the same place, but I understand why you want to.
Just put loop and then it'll fit in any space. I think for me, the other thing I really like about this album is that I generally, as a rule, like albums where bands are not getting on at the time. Like I think Weezer with Pinkerton, Rivers Cuomo was at his weirdest. Probably my favorite Weezer album. Ruben's last album, when they were like literally minutes away from killing each other, probably the best Ruben album. I think there's something to be said for a band that's not complacent and it's just like, let's just fucking channel this bitterness and anger into something, regardless of if the album itself is bitter or angry. I think it can be a good creative catalyst. And I think there is that in there. I think they're trying a lot of stuff which, may be a bit self-aggrandizing, a bit over the top or whatever, but I think they are still trying some stuff that sounds new and fresh. And for that, I really dig this album.
I think it's as it came out in 2000, the year after Infinity on High. I think it's just an album that needed more time in the oven, to be honest.
You make it sound like it's the Meteora to the hybrid theory, and I feel like that is somewhat of a disservice.
I think it
Why
probably is the Meteor to Hybrid Theory.
why is no one mentioning Beat It as well?
No, we will not be having that. It does not count as on Folie Do because if it does, it's going way down.
I love that cover.
No,
Yeah, it's a
will
good,
not stand
like,
for that.
not as good as Smooth Criminal, but
Oh
it's.
no, hang on. Yeah, Smooth Criminal is the best Michael Jackson cover.
And if you want to talk about bad Fallout Boy covers, you got to admit that Ghostbusters
Oh,
is
I'm not. They
like,
are not good at covering songs. Fall Out Boy should not be allowed to cover songs.
yeah, because they
But
did the
beat it.
best with Beat
Beat it
It. Yeah,
is
you're right.
fits into the fucking self-aggrandizing big head syndrome again. Look at the fucking video and Patrick Stump doing the fucking impression as if he's got any right to be doing that sort of thing. I'm no Michael Jackson apologist, but that fucking song is bad, and I think they know how fucking bad it is, and
Well,
not bad in the Michael Jackson bad good way, but
I think like if you're gonna do a Michael Jackson cover, you do all of those references. That's what Alien Ant Farm do. That's what everyone does if they
yeah, and I
cover a
don't like
Michael
Smooth
Jackson
Criminal
song.
either.
What?
Really.
That was the first piece of music I ever had on physical, a physical version of. I had the double single of that and movies on cassette from
I mean,
Woolworths.
movies is really good. Movies is really good.
Oh,
This whole Alien Ant Farm resurgence of late, that's a
Hell
strange one to
yeah!
me. No, I
Hell
don't understand it
yeah!
at all.
Hell
playing in
yeah!
Margate in a few weeks. I expect to see you there.
Did you get an interview?
I just wanted to stop this video in its tracks. This is really the time to discuss it, I
Either
think.
way, let's put Folie
That's a
into the tier
teaser
list,
for this
shall we?
channel.
Are we saying SW? Is that what you just said?
Look, you guys are going to say S. I'm happy to put it in S. Um, I think we're going to end up having to move some things if we do, though, because it's going to be very top loaded with then a lot of stuff at the bottom.
Well,
I I'm just going to say I am happy that one of my favorite albums, in your opinion, is Half Baked. That's the
I don't
one.
think it's half baked. I think it's three quarters baked. And
Okay.
and if it had that extra quarter, it would probably be at the top of the tier list.
something's a
Stumpy,
better
put up the oven.
something's a better half baked. You get cookies and you make them just a little bit underbaked so they're nice and soft and gooey. God damn, that's the best cookies.
No, I like them crunchy.
Yeah, Dobby looks like the guy who likes gooey stuff. You're right.
I'm going to put this currently between Infinity on High and From Under the Cork Tree. I feel like that is a compromise for the time being, but we can always move around.
I would say I find myself I'm very torn as to which I prefer between Cork Tree and Folie Do. So I've got no problem with them being alongside each other.
Compromise. It's what makes tier lists the best.
We can't all be happy because then we'd be communist. Right, okay.
You
Let's
changed your tune.
no, 'cause
So,
then you'd be happy because you'd be communist.
Folie Do was released in 2008. When was their next album after that, Tom?
2013, the year I became a man. Um,
He popped his cherry.
no, I can guarantee you I hadn't.
You
still
weren't
a little
listening to that
virgin
album
boy.
yet, yeah?
Yeah. But I turned a princely 18 years old, and this album came out. Save Rock and Roll. I don't think I was quite, I would watch Kerrang all the time. I think I might have been getting Kerrang magazine as well at the time, but I remember the comeback coming quite out of the blue. I don't remember there being much build up. It was just, at least in my vision of it and what my exposure at the time, it just was like, oh, there's a new Fall Out Boy album,
It was
and
very sudden, yeah.
it sounds real different to what they were doing before. It sounds like a real departure. There's Elton John. There's I think isn't Two Chains in one of their music videos,
Two
and
Chains. That's what you have to
Is it
say.
Two Chains?
I'm pretty
I can't
sure is
remember.
it
Or
Two
is it
Chains
Big
when
Sean? Big
Big
Sean's on the
Sean.
album. I don't know if he's the one in the video.
I'm pretty sure it's Two Chains in the music video when they're burning everything with a flamethrower.
Yes, sorry, you're
Tom's
right. Yeah, I'm
Tom's
thinking
cancelled
of
now.
because I think Big Sean is in later.
And yeah,
Just
I
for it to open up with classical music, which everyone seemed to be sampling at the time, was very different. I'll give you that. That's for sure. Um, I don't really know how. Is it more just rock? Because they've got a song called obviously Save Rock and Roll, and that's obviously the name of the whole album. But is it a rock and roll album, would
I
you
would
say?
say this is if if pop rock was to be a good thing, it would sound like Save Rock and Roll. I think
Hmm.
Save Rock and Roll is very good. And I again, 2013, I had a partner who absolutely loved Fall Out Boy. I was going through a period of kind of hating Fall Out Boy at that point. Um, Save Rock and Roll came out, and I mean, I think I'm on record on UDS saying 2013 is my favorite year for music. Save Rock and Roll is one of my favorite albums of that year. I love Save Rock and Roll very much. Um, it annoyed me when it was announced that they'd said Save Rock and Roll as the title with My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark as the first single, because I was very much like, this isn't rock music. You ain't gonna save it that way. But now I see it's tongue in cheek.
I'm
Oh,
I'm glad that you've matured. Like you're no longer like those people moaning about Spider-Man puzzles in the trailers. Like that's
um,
really funny.
yeah, I really like this album a lot. I used to listen to this all the time. It's not perfect. There's, Where Did the Party Go? I never really loved, and there's some of the pop sensibilities that feel a little off to me. But I think on the whole, I'm a big fan of Save Rock and Roll.
You
I
don't think
think
it's wanky?
I do. I think Save Rock and Roll is wanky, but not as wanky as What a Catch, Johnny. Because I mean, you've got Elton John on it. You can afford to wank yourself off a little bit with that. Elton John versus like Elvis Costello and Brendan Urie. Do be serious.
If there is
Dobby.
anything else I'll take away from this is that you can only be wanky when Elton John's involved.
I was going to say Dobby wants to be wanky with Elton John confirmed.
Do
Yeah,
you not?
Apparently he's incontinent now. I think that's a bit of a turn off for me.
Okay.
happens to us all eventually.
It does, but if I had a
Um,
preference,
I think it is wanky, but it's a different thing. Like if it's because they've been away for 4 years, for them to come back, they needed to make
It need
quite
to
a
be
big
different.
statement.
Yeah,
Yeah, they need to make quite a big statement. If they'd come back, if they'd disappeared after Infinity on High and then come back with Folie Do after 4 years, I think people would have been very disappointed. Instead, they did Folie Do too early, and it was like, yeah, this is fine, but it didn't get the recognition it probably deserved because it was perhaps too soon.
I think
it,
Save
the
Rock and
thing
Roll came, and I think perhaps was a little overrated because it came after that, but I still think it's very good.
I think the Phoenix as an opening track might be their best opening track
The
of
Phoenix
any of
is
their
their
albums.
best opening track. It's one of the best opening tracks I've ever seen. It's like whenever like they opened, I saw them at Reading in 2013, and I saw them at Wembley Arena in 2014. I'm pretty sure they opened both shows with the Phoenix, and both times it was explosive. I really enjoy the Phoenix. I think it's a great song, and if you're, I love it when bands make a song that is you know just there to fucking explode the second they start playing it, and the Phoenix nails it for me.
I agree.
I'll also say strong closer with Save Rock and Roll.
Yeah, I think
Like
Save Rock and Roll's good. I see a lot of people really hating that song, but I don't. When you've got the song with Courtney Love just beforehand, you can't really Save Rock and
See,
Roll. It's
I
fun.
I'm gonna be that I can't help myself at least one tier list. I think the Courtney Love song, the Rat Tat Tat, it might be my favorite song on the album.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I do like Rat a Tat Tat.
It's so bad,
It's
it's good.
I feel like I've always been a bit of a Courtney Love apologist, and then whenever I actually see her do something, I'm like, oh, that's horrible. Like when the first time I heard Rat a Tat Tat, I was like, oh, really? You got Courtney Love on this? And funnily
It's
that she
Courtney bitch,
hosted
but
that is good. That's great. She hosted an episode of Nevermind the Buzzcocks recently, and going into you're like this is gonna be good, and then you watch and you're like, oh, why did they do that? That was bad. Um, yeah, the only I think Where Did the Party Go never really worked for me, and Missing You's a little bit wet for me, but the rest of the album, good times. I think all
wait,
the guest stars fit really like Fox's on Just One Yesterday, really well used. I think Big Sean's good on The Mighty Fall, although I always do take umbrage when a rapper comes in and starts just throwing the N-word into an album that really doesn't need it. But I enjoy Save Rock and
can
Roll.
I ask, is wet a negative now?
I don't. It's wet as in like
well,
not a negative, but it's like it's a bit wet. It's watered down, perhaps.
Okay.
see for me, wet means like sort of like a bit sappy and a bit
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not necessarily sappy in an emotional way, but it's a bit, oh, you'd love this if you're feeling a little bit sad. And sometimes that's good, but I'd rather a song that really went out of its way rather than tried to evoke a feeling in a half-hearted way.
Yeah, I'd say so. So what we're saying is the song WAP isn't actually wet.
Okay, yeah,
Makes
sure.
makes you think.
Do you know the song WAP, Dobby?
Yeah, I know. Where's Pussy?
Oh, I thought it was a thing on old phones to get the internet.
That's
You'd
WPA, you silly boy.
you,
Ah, he's dyslexic.
you needed the WAP code.
I don't know what that means, Tom.
Wherever Tom goes, there's a WAP code, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
No, no, I don't.
I have to WAP it out. I think this album isn't as much to my taste as the pre-hiatus albums, just personally for me, but I can appreciate the ambition and the quality and finesse of the songwriting in this. So I'm curious to see where you guys want to put it in the list.
I would put
I,
this in A.
I would also put this in A. I think there are a lot of bands that it's one of those things, isn't it, where you don't want to be doing the same thing all the time, and they couldn't be doing pop punk for the rest of their lives, you know. So I think that taking some time away and then coming back, and it's still being rock, but just in a completely different light, and it was actually good. That deserves to be recognized, but I still don't think it is as good as the rawness of the first few albums they had before they split.
I agree.
Perhaps a
I
little bit polished, is it?
I put it in A. I always said, which is a sentiment that I don't agree with anymore, was that early Fallout Boy was better than early Panic at the Disco, but latter day Panic at the Disco was better than latter day Fallout Boy. I think I said that around the sort of the Death of the Bachelor era of Panic at the Disco, and now I'm completely flipped. I think mainly because I think my opinion of Brendan Urie has also slipped as well. He seems like a bit of a cunt.
Yeah.
So
What demonetized?
oh, this channel isn't monetized yet. It's fine. But yeah, I think this album is that sweet spot for me, and this is just my personal taste. Before they veered too much into
This
the
is
poppy stuff.
this is the point when they nailed what their sound
Mm.
could be if they want pop in there. This is pop rock, and shortly it becomes pock. Pock? Sure, pock. It becomes pop. It becomes pop, and not good pop, I would
It
say.
it is certainly not poggers. Well, let's move forward into the future, and by the future I mean 2015 with Beauty American Psycho or whatever they call that album.
Yeah.
Uh,
Can
thoughts?
I? Okay, so this album came out and I didn't really pay attention to it. But then they did a remix album of this, which included lots of rappers and the like, a few of which I heard. And if I was to buy both of them, both of the albums, the CD with the rappers in would be very much worn down because I
Whereas the other
listened.
one would be the CD with the wrapper on.
There you go. There you go. I to the point where if I listen to this album now and the songs sound different, I'm like, what is this? This doesn't sound good at all. So with that in mind, that is my exposure to this album. I listened to the remix more than this one. What was the remix one called? Make American Psycho Again. Because it's a play on the Trump thing, obviously. So for me, this album by itself is very low on the scale, but the remix one is one I would take over it any day. And that's pretty much my thoughts on this album.
I think that's an important delineation to make is that the tier list we're working on doesn't have any of the compilations or remixes or EPs or what have you. So I guess we've got to go by the vanilla,
What we've got in front of us, yeah.
yeah, the normal version. I agree. I think the problem for this album for me is very much the personal context. Excuse me. There's at least two songs on here that were used as prominent backing tracks for wrestling things like WWE things, and that really taints them for me. Specifically, Centuries and Immortals. And yeah, I think there are some good things on this album. I do like the song Uma Thurman. I think that the B-52 vibe of it is fun. And I think Jetpack Blues is a good track, but I think that there's a lot of this album that has been tainted by context for me, and it's just not as good. It feels again like a slightly watered down version of Save Rock and Roll. Dobby, you haven't given much thought on this album yet. Give me thoughts.
Um, this album came out, and I just recently broken up with the partner who was a mad lover of Fall Out Boy. Um,
Context.
Did you break up because of this album?
no.
Okay.
Um, so I was predisposed to never enjoy this album. Um,
But you
and I
didn't let
didn't.
that stop you, and now it's an S.
No,
Okay.
didn't like it then. Don't like it now. I think. I also think Uma Thurman's pretty good, but that's only because I've seen them play it live now, and I think I understand the context of it a bit better. On record, I don't think it's that great. I think Irresistible's okay as well. Otherwise, I think again, I kind of look at this as a little sibling to Save Rock and Roll, and maybe if it had had more time in the oven, it would be better. But it's so full of a lot of the stuff that was going on in pop music at the time that was really annoying me. And oh boy, we're gonna get to it in a minute. But um, it's not good. Centuries is dreadful. Centuries is a fucking awful song. They close, well, they come close to closing their sets with it most of the time now. It's the penultimate song usually, and boy howdy, waiting through that for Saturday is
What makes Century so bad?
it's just a fucking terrible song. And not to mention the hook. The hook isn't even theirs. It's a hook they've taken, and that always annoys me.
Where's it from?
It's from Luca by what's her name? No, not Luca.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
Suzanne Vega.
Suzanne Vega. Thank you. Yeah.
I forgot that.
Um,
Yeah, that's from there.
it's the
It's
same as Miss Jackson by Panic at the Disco taking. I can't remember what it is.
Is it Outcast if it's called Miss Jackson?
No.
I
I
don't
also
know
do,
which song you're
I don't
talking
want to.
about.
I'm actually you, but I now that you mention it, it's Tom Steiner by Suzanne Vega.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry,
that
not
is
Luca.
your your
Um,
your song, Tom, obviously. We know it well.
Not Homer singing "My Name Is Luca," which might be one of the most underrated
Uh,
Simpsons jokes.
um, I
Song about domestic violence.
the song Miss Jackson by Panic at the Disco also takes a hook, and it's not even a good song, but uses a hook to make people think it's good.
We're in
Um,
remix culture now, Dobby. Stop talking about your
this is 10
musical
years ago.
ovens
It's
where they
11
need to
years
bake.
ago.
They were early on it. You're right.
Yeah, it's not a good album. It's not their worst album. It's not. I'd hesitate to say
Not Mania.
yeah, it's not Mania. Um,
Spoiler.
it it's C. It's a C. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's just a really boring album. You look at their discography, even Mania, I think, is more recognizable for how bad it is. American Beauty, American Psycho is just, oh yeah, there's that one. Fuck it off.
Spoilers. But if you do listen to this album, I would recommend the remix album instead. It's very
But
good.
but in terms of the vanilla basic album, you're also happy with the C, Craig.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. We will leave it there. Go listen to remixes. Remixes can be fun. I tell you what's not fun. It is Mania, which is a purple album that sucks. Dobby.
D tier, move on.
Any other thoughts beyond that?
Hmm. No, that's a story I can't tell on a video. Um,
Oh dear.
pop,
Uh,
pop.
He's tempted to
Fall Out
tell the
Boy,
story.
Fall Out Boy attempting to evoke again what is the current zeitgeist of pop music at the time in what was it, 2017?
2018, wasn't it? I
2018,
think.
20 January it came out, 2018. Trying to evoke that because they wanted to be big things. And I imagine Pete Wentz fucking missed having all his celebrity friends, and he was like, maybe this will get us in with them. And no, bad, awful music. Every song's terrible. Worst thing that's ever happened to music, maybe. It's an offense to ears. People shouldn't have to be put through this. Use this in Guantanamo Bay. Move on. D tier.
The
worse
worst thing.
than worse than Celine Dion and Ruben.
What? I would listen to the shit out of that. I think there's worse things that's happened to music. Like
I feel like did this album touch you or something? Like you're very something's happened there.
there's a story behind this album that Dobby can't tell on air.
Um, this album's just a bit messy and it's a bit all over the place. I think I've listened to it twice. Um, yeah, it seems like they want that. Hey, we're this rock band, but pop looks pretty good. Shame we can't do both, really. We can't decide what we're gonna do. So here it is. and that was pretty much my time with it.
They did their Eras tour set list at Download this year. They did, I think it was one song from Mania. No one gave a shit. They moved on.
That's fair enough.
What song do they do? Young and Menace.
No, it wasn't Young and Menace. It was, oh, what was the other one?
Champion.
No, hang on, we have to look it up.
Whilst you look it up, Tom, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's not the worst thing that's ever happened to music. I think it
Last
might
of the
be
real ones. Sorry.
okay. I think it might be the most disappointed I've ever been for an album because even though I wasn't a massive fan of American Beauty, I think, whenever there's a band that you've liked for, decade plus, whenever there's a new release, you hold out a little bit of hope that it's going to be okay. And I think even on the first listen, I thought Young and Menace, I was like, oh, okay, if this is like a one-off and they're doing something a bit different, but the rest of it is kind of cohesive, I'm not overly against it. But then when that was about as good as it got, I was like, oh shit, this is bad. And yeah, it's one I think I've listened to at least parts of every song once. I have not had any compulsion to listen to it again. Bottom of D. Are we in agreement?
Oh yeah, it's the worst. In fact, it makes me inclined to move Evening with Your Girlfriend up, and I've never even heard it.
I mean, I put it below it on D. They're
I
still
want
both on
Evening with Your
D.
Girlfriend in C.
Fuck it, let's do it. It's there. Right,
The
and
worst thing since music, though. Jeez.
I was being
It is.
hyperbolic. It's purely we're in the confines of this tier list, of course. There
I
are
thought
worse
you were
things, but
always serious. I thought that was your
me
gimmick.
serious?
for
Chimp
some reason
Reaper.
that delivery was just made me think of Jar Jar Binks playing the Joker.
It made me
Mine.
think of Jar Jar Binks. Yeah, yeah. Do it. Yeah, I'm not going to say what I thought. What's the next album?
No, tell me I can cut it out.
No, 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 never say that.
Okay, I'm putting a pin on that. Right, okay, there we are, finishing up with 2023's So Much for Stardust, which,
Before we get to that, we should probably note that after Mania, they didn't really do anything and then released the second greatest hits album,
yeah,
which is very strange. Very strange. Um,
it was like another 5 years between albums, so it was almost as long as between. In fact, it might even have been as long as between Folie Do and Save Rock and Roll. So it was a big old gap again.
The
Um,
second greatest hits was effectively their we're going on the Hella Mega tour. We have to release something album, wasn't it?
yeah,
do
what a
we
good
have enough
time.
hits for that? Shut up and put the songs on
Not
there.
from that 10 years they didn't. That's why it was weird to me. They did a second greatest hits and it was 10 years of music that wasn't hits for the most
Yeah.
part.
I think it's also worth mentioning that they have put out some good stuff that isn't a
Yep.
full album release. I think Pack Sam Days might be some of the best, well, at least again, my personal favorite stuff they've done, where they basically were like, hey, let's just do a hardcore punk EP, like real zero production value, but in a good way. Real sort of grungy aesthetic. Really dug that EP.
Aren't most of those songs really short as well?
Yeah, it's real. It's almost like if they were like just doing a Black Flag tribute, but with original tracks.
Ooh, I like Black Flag.
Oh, I love Black Flag. Henry Rollins doing Fall Out Boy songs would be fun.
Hillary.
Uh,
Yep, Hillary Rollins.
Hillary Rollins, dance, dance. I would definitely listen to that. So yeah, so they've done other stuff, but we're just sticking to the albums. So much for Stardust. I think if I was to summarize it, it's an album that I've not listened to an awful lot of, but I think it's if they kind of just didn't break up or go on hiatus after Folie Do, I could imagine this being the album that they would have made afterwards with everything else. It feels like much more of a return to that sound with other sort of, you know, self-aggrandizing experimentation, their spoken word and other bits and bobs like that. But I think it's definitely more of a return, which I mean, after Mania was always going to be a massive improvement. I also think, just before we get into opinions on this album, that it's interesting that this was their first release on Fueled by Ramen since Take This to Your Grave, which is a little bit of a homecoming as well. No other thoughts on that. I just thought it was interesting.
No,
But
definitely.
Craig, what do you think about this album?
If there is nothing else than this album, then my first thought is that I don't think Fall Out Boy should be covering other people's songs. And I think we can all agree with that. Is that right?
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah. The We Didn't Start the Fire cover.
Oh
I
God.
yeah.
You didn't even know what I was talking about.
I forgot that about that song. I forgot it's a bonus track. I forgot all about it.
It is. I, I feel like that song. There's a reason people haven't covered it, and just some of the lyrics.
You know, it's like when Bowling for Soup did their updated version of 1985.
Yeah.
I don't know that because everyone must have disregarded it and said we don't need this because
I
I
mean,
don't think I've ever heard that.
I think it was only like an
Yeah.
in the lounge sort of like live thing. It wasn't like a studio. I
Oh,
think they might
okay.
have even have been at like Reading or Download or something, and just with the
But
acoustic guitars
do you
did it.
know 1985 is a cover as well? It's not
Yeah,
even their
Yeah.
song.
by
So
SR71, which released like 1 year before the Bowling for Soup version. It wasn't even like a retro track. They were just like, "Hey, we like this song, and so we're gonna
yeah.
just cover it."
Wasn't Jarrett Reddick in SR50 71 or whatever it is?
I don't think so, but I think he was good for. There was, it wasn't
Yeah.
like a classic, just we're covering this for the sake of it. I think there was an
Yeah.
agreement or something more complicated. But my main hold up with, well, we'll get to the rest of the album. I have many hold ups with this cover. One of which is that it's bad. The second of which is that everything in the Billy Joel version is in chronological order, and so therefore is a sort of a telling from X date to current day at the time. This is just a random amalgamation of things that don't have any connection to each other. And it's just like,
What would
it's
you
about
say the biggest story in the last 10 years is as well? For the whole world, what was the biggest story?
9/11.
Okay.
Yep, in the last 10 years, that
Oh,
was the
sorry.
biggest story.
Um, I'm sorry.
Just had
I'm
to
just
get it
gonna
in, didn't he?
never forget.
It was COVID.
Oh yeah.
They don't even mention that in the song for some reason. And you think like it's supposed to be chronicling news stories. But yeah, that was the weird thing as well, I thought.
Just some of these lines. Tiger Woods, MySpace, Monsanto, GMOs, Harry Potter, Twilight, Michael Jackson dies. It's like
He sure does.
Trump gets impeached twice, polar bears got no ice.
That sounds like a rap, like, yo, dog, those polar bears got no ass, son. The album as a whole, I'll try to get us back on track somewhat. Um, I think, I think if you were to see this on a graph, the last two albums are on a somewhat really down trajectory, and this one feels more like this is the Fallout Boy we all know, and it feels good to have them find somewhat of a voice once again. It feels like they're comfortable playing this music rather than trying to branch out into pop rock. It feels like I wouldn't say this is a stopgap, but this feels like a healing album that it makes me wonder what the next one will be like with positivity, where you listen to the Mania and you're just like, I wonder what the next one's going to be like because this
Yeah.
is crud. So I feel like this is a step in the right direction, so to speak.
I agree. I think it's the bonus track notwithstanding, I think it is much more the Fallout Boy that I would like. I still think it probably veers into too many experimental areas that don't work for me. But I think overall it feels weirdly nostalgic in a nice way, and I dig it. Dobby, what's your thoughts on this album?
There are two different schools of thinking you could have as to why this album came to be, right? First and foremost, Mania came out. Most people who any kind of taste in music said this is not good, and they were like, okay, we're going to need to release something good, and they eventually got around to doing so much for Stardust. I think the more likely reason is we're in a wave of nostalgia at the moment, and Fallout Boy seeing that were like, hey, we could do that. And it just so happened they can still do that and decided they wouldn't fucking bother doing that for the last 14 years or whatever and have ended up making, frankly, one of my favorite albums of the last few years. So Much for Stardust is really, really good. It is like you say, if they hadn't gone on the hiatus, or perhaps even if they had taken a hiatus, it feels like if So Much for Stardust had been what they came back with, people would have been like, yeah, this is a great time. Uh, it's not perfect. There's a couple of things I don't like on it very much, but I think on the whole, I mean, Joe Troman must be fucking wanking himself silly. He gets to play the guitar again, finally. How can you have a guitarist in your band and not let him do anything for 10 years? Um, I think it's telling because he went off. He took some time away from the band for his mental health, but then they released an album that's actually really good, and he gets to play lots of guitar. And he was like, he came back within a month or so, I think it was. He was like, oh, I can't be missing this. I really really like this. I think I remember in the Sharkies last year, spunking a little bit about how much I enjoy so much for Stardust. It does feel like Infinity on High. It feels like Folie Deux, and From Under the Cork Tree. It feels like Fall Out Boy came back, and I would never knock that. But it does leave me with some trepidation as to what may come next. Will they continue doing this? Because clearly they still can, or will they go off in their fucky route again and be the 2010s Fallout Boy? At this point, I'm really not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if they went off that way again. I hope they don't. Um, but yeah, I really like so much for Stardust. I feel like it's one that's maybe a little bit underrated in recent times already because it feels like not a lot of people are talking about it already. I still listen to a bunch of those songs uh, on the reg. If I were to compare it to any of the previous albums, I would probably compare it to Folie Do because it's Fall Out Boy experimenting a little bit, but for the most part sounding like them. Um,
Can we just clarify? You don't talk about masturbation this much in a
Only when
now
Fall Out Boy
period, do
come
you?
up.
Okay, okay, no, that's good.
The only way you can do it.
When pop punk comes up, because they have a tendency to get a bit touchy feely, shall we say.
There is that famous picture of Pete Wentz with his knob out as well. So
I never actually saw that. I only ever knew it from the This Ain't the Scene video. So Pete
I mean,
Wentz's Willie has never touched mine virgin eyes.
it's a man with a penis. It's not, it's
What?
Seen mine, you've seen them all, ain't ya?
yeah, pretty
Mean
much
men are peeny?
a weenie beanie. Uh, I agree with all the sentiment that's been said. I really enjoyed this album. I think for me, based on my personal rankings, I would still, just because I don't think I've probably again my own fault. I haven't fallen in love with it as much as I've fallen in love with everything in the earlier end of the catalog. I would put it in a B tier, but I would imagine that the sentiment is probably closer to A, maybe in the
I'd have it
room.
alongside Say Rock and Roll. A for me, because it's definitely better than Take Us to Your Grave.
Your opinion, but fine. Craig, what about you? What do you say?
Yeah, I'm more happy to give it a more positive spin. I'm all for artists trying something different. But obviously the pop route did not work well, so they reset and found their voice again, and I think that probably is worth something to be uh, noted and given some positivity.
I think there is definitely something to be said for, I know nostalgia can be a hell of a drug, but I think if you're good at something and it's what you enjoy doing and you feel like you've got more of that in you, I don't think there's any harm in that. AC/DC made an entire 50 plus year career of it. So I would say a maybe below Save Rock and Roll, or were you thinking above it?
I'm kind of easy. They're very interchangeable to me, I think.
Okay, well, I'll run down the list as we've got it now because we have got all of the full-length albums in the list now. So, in condescending order, we've got D, Mania, Where. Then we've got Evening Out with Your Girlfriend, followed by American Beauty, American Psycho in C. B, we've got Take This to Your Grave, big up. A, then we've got So Much for Stardust, and then Save Rock and Roll. And then in S tier, which I feel like is the most contentious out of all of it, we've got From Under the Cork Tree, Folie Do, and then Infinity on High, currently at the top. Any thoughts, feelings, questions, concerns, woes? What do you think?
I knew it was going to be top heavy, and it surprises me with Fall Out Boy that it's so top heavy. Because in my head, I
Hmm.
don't think of them as wow, astounding band. But how much of that is because of the last 10 years?
Hmm.
Well, but equally, if they hadn't spent the last 10 years being fucky, they probably would be massive in my head. Uh,
I
I,
think given our conversations and us as a group, I feel like this is good.
I would say the album's in S. There's not much between them at all.
Hmm.
I think it really does just come down to personal preference between the three of them.
And the fact that they came out in a 3 year run between 2006 and 2008 is frankly mad. Like that is
Walkthrough
some.
was 2005, wasn't it?
I thought it was 2006. I could be wrong.
But
Someone
I get,
correct us.
but we can all agree that Mania was dead on arrival.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm
2005
good to
Cork.
go. Oh, still fine. Still 4 years with those three albums is
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
They were smoking the good talent reefer. Um, anyways, that's it then for that tier list. I think I'm very content with that list as well. If there's anything else that you would like us to tier list, then just let us know. We have got some other ones. If you want to see our thoughts on, I believe we've got Aquabats, Muse.
Aqua. Let's do Aqua.
Oh man, yeah, hell yeah. That and Andrew Lloyd Webber.
It
I think we've got Foo
Got an
Fighters.
outdated gorillas.
Ooh, 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 ooh,
is
ooh,
outdated
ooh.
now, isn't it? Yeah.
You have to do a redux. Um, and yeah, music everywhere, all the
Makes the
time,
people come together. Yeah.
over
Madonna
me.
tier list confirmed.
Donatello.
Donatello, Madonna.
Madonna.
Oh, Madonna.
I'd much rather listen to a full Madonna album.
Nah, me neither.
Life is a mystery. Everyone must stand alone. I hear you call my
What's your
name.
favorite Madonna song?
Oh, like a virgin.
Okay.
Because I really like the Weird Al cover, like a surgeon, and
Mhm.
so therefore it's just a nice connotation. I did kind of have a real guilty pleasure for the one that she did that samples the ABBA song. The
Hung
uh,
Up.
yeah,
Yeah.
that one's pretty good. Um,
I would say it's a toss-up between Beautiful Stranger and Ray of Light for me.
nice,
I love
nice.
Beautiful Stranger. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool.
Uh, Papa Don't Preach is pretty good as well.
Is
Um,
this how we're ending this video?
Yeah, apparently.
we're just gonna fade out. It's just like there's no conclusion. We're just gonna fade out talking
If
about
Fall Out
Madonna.
Boy can go pop for 10 years, we can go pop for 2 seconds.
No,
That's
that's
true. I'm
fine.
surprised there hasn't been a Madonna track or feature on a Fall Out Boy song, to be fair. She's clinging on to relevancy. Um, anyway, peace out.
Bye.